Hey everybody, this is Matt McQueenie of the Mix Minus Podcast. Can't believe I'm here again very shortly after having another podcast with my friend Matt O'Daniels about the college football season preview, a little baseball talk and more basketball talk than I thought we would do. But I was asked today, which is Thursday, August 22nd, not sure if this will post today or in the days to come, I was asked by my friend and fellow podcaster Earnest Christian to be on his podcast, and in the vein of trying to create more content, I said, hey, let's simulcast this. So it's going to be on my podcast and his podcast, and we'll go from there. I think in this time where you're very busy, a lot going on, I'm going through school, although I'm in a little bit of an opening here, a couple of weeks off before the fall semester. I have two kids. Ernest has two kids. We both have wives. We both have professional careers. There's just only so much time to be creating and putting out content. As much as you want to be doing it all the time, it's impossible. With my schedule, it is much harder than it ever was. I was always able to get one episode out. But what I think I'm going to do here, let's put it out to the masses. Let's do this together. And so I have this little open, and then we're just going to jump right into the podcast that I did with Ernest, and it will be on both of our feeds. Again, thanks so much for listening, and do remember, this podcast is brought to you by Big League Pillows. Go to bigleaguepillows.com to get your customized sports jersey pillow. Put your name on the front, the name on the back, the number. We also have pro sports in the play now. We're baseball uniforms. We're going to have football. We're going to have basketball. All those pro sports I think we have. So go to bigleaguepillows.com to create and pick your jersey, or to pick and create, I guess it would be. And then if you use promo code MIX-, I will get you free shipping, which is more than a couple bucks these days. So go ahead over there after listening to this podcast. Thanks, folks.
I'll say I enjoyed your podcast today, though. You had Matt Daniels doing the your yearly college football preview, and touch of football, touch of baseball really, and touch of basketball. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, when you do this, you just have to always continue to do those foundational episodes that you always do, because those are sort of the those are like the yearly signposts that you got to hit, and if you don't hit them, then the thing just starts to fade. That's why they call it pod fading. And I don't want it to fade, but I do have diminishing time these days, as everyone does who grows up, gets older, gets jobs, has kids, goes to school, does whatever it is they do. And I've actually been doing a lot more behind the scenes with podcasts, trying to make it a little bit more of a viable kind of business opportunity in other realms. But of course, you're not recording that and speaking into something. So podcasts have maintained in my life as a very important piece, listening and consuming and doing them when you can and talking about them and creating business plans around them. But actually recording them, I noticed the one I did last night was actually the first one in August. But one of the nice things with that is when you build up a large enough inventory archive of episodes, they still continue to churn on their own. They still continue to get downloads, and you're still getting numbers.
That is true.
Yeah.
I've noticed it also on my end too. I've gotten into also a lot of what do you call evergreen type episodes, where like they kind of still matter even months later, maybe some cases years later. It's funny. I actually, like, in the last year, more so now. Like, I've done this slowly in the last couple of years, but more so now. I've kind of turned my podcast more into like a variety now. Almost similar to yours to some extent, where like I'm doing more personal discussions now about my life, which before I would never do. Now I feel like, and I think a lot of reason for me personally is because of the fact that, and you're going through this too also. We're close to the same age. We're both married, both have two boys, around the same age. More than sports matters. Like, sports matters, of course, to us, but there's a lot of other things in our lives that we care about, that we like to talk about. Politics, lifestyles, parenting, movies, whatever it may be. And there was a point last year, maybe earlier this year, that I got burnt out talking about only sports. I got burnt out. So I started to triple down and on the content I was doing, and just started doing some different things, and it made me happier, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, I think you have to do the things that keep you doing things. And it can be easy when you start a podcast to say, let's focus on one thing and let's try to build that audience. And you can build the audience and you could do well, but then you run into something, even at the highest levels of this, where you see Dan Le Batard, he just had to break down the fourth or fifth wall and just start talking about something that really bothered him that Donald Trump had said. And a lot of people said, oh, I can't believe they did that. He's going against the rules. But that's a really extreme example of it. But at times you just have to open up. It's the only way things evolve and our lives evolve. When you do this for a certain period of years, and I'm coming up myself on year number 6 in September. You've been doing it probably 10 years now. And
8. This week is 8 years.
Wow. So you're 8. I'll be 6 next month. There's just no way but to evolve. Because if you pretend like other things aren't happening, if you pretend like you're not gaining interests in other things, it's just going to die on the vine because it's got no life to it, because you're not excited. You're most excited about the new things that come into your life and the new kind of activities you're doing and the new obsessions you have. And if you're not talking about those, then you're not going to come across as somebody who's worth listening to. And I think really what the best part of content is stitching all of those things together and creating kind of a cohesive narrative around them. And that cohesive narrative is you. And you're the one who has that unique fingerprint. You're the one who has those unique aspects that you like this one show, that you love metal, but you love Michael Jackson, and you fight off everybody who talks about the Finding Neverland thing.
You've seen that, huh?
That's your thing.
You've seen that now.
It shows up all the time. And someone would say oh, okay, but you're bringing different aspects to bear because you're interested in different things. And I think when we grow up and we're teenagers, we kind of have this feeling that, hey, I'm into metal. Hey, I'm into hardcore. This is what I'm into. This is all I'm into. This is all I listen to, because you can't almost accept that you can have a well-rounded person. You can't accept that it's not selling out to like other things. And so once you come to those realizations and you realize that all you have is you, everywhere you go, there you are. We do have families, we do have wives and all that, but no one cares about us as much as we do. And you have to be open to experience, because it's the only way you get better. We're going to live, God willing, 90, 100 years. We better evolve. And if we're still doing podcasts, then I hope we're talking about different things.
What would be the discussion point in our 80s? Will we still have Earth Speaker podcast in our 80s? that'd be pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think the technology would just pull the things from your head. It would just just go onto some canvas and it would just pull the things from your head. And then all of a sudden everyone would go, oh my God, old people are thinking that? Come on now.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy. No, and I felt a sense of recently, a sense of just, I don't want rules. I don't want to be bogged. And that's one of the things I got annoyed with, oh, you're the sports guy, so let's talk sports, basketball. And I love talking about basketball. I love talking about sports. But I don't want to be pigeonholed to just one thing or two things. If I want to talk about the Disney bundle, that's what the Disney Plus bundle they just announced 2 weeks ago. I'm going to talk about it. And I think people who are loyal to a show, even in the sports realm, don't mind. People say, "Oh, it's sports," but I really believe that people who are loyal listeners to your show or any show for that matter do like a little bit of tinge of your personal life too. A peel back behind the curtain. So you say, who is this guy in real life? Who is he behind the scenes? Who is, family life? I think people do appreciate that.
I also think it's a lot of consumers, and I do this too, you pick and choose. I don't listen to every Joe Rogan episode. In fact, because they're so long, probably at this point I listen to one out of every 20 or 25, as crazy as that sounds. I listen to the majority of Bill Simmons, and I do it just out of habit. I don't know that I need to listen to everyone.
Can I confess? Something real quick about Bill Simmons? I've kind of sort of gotten a little tired of him a little bit. Just a little bit. Like, I find myself skipping episodes now. Like, for some reason. I started, and I never with Simmons done that. But recently, like, unless, like he'll have like maybe segments of a show where like he'll have like Joe House on there, whatever, and then that's cool. But then you'll have like was it Kevin Costner he had last, a month ago, something like that? Yeah. No offense, Kevin Costner, I don't really care. I don't really give a shit. So I tend to just skip it. Maybe I'll go back to it down the road and listen to it, but in that moment, I don't care. You know, and Simmons is bringing a lot of people that I really don't really, you know, care for. I mean, he had on Kara Swisher last week. That's interesting. I like Karen Swisher. She has a, you know, I listen to her podcast, used to anyway, on a regular basis on Recode. But otherwise, a lot of his, like, you know, guests are like actors or actresses. Sarah Silverman, no offense, don't really care for her. I think she's overrated in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So I don't listen to that podcast. I find myself now more and more skipping either portions of Simmons' podcast or entire podcast, which as of late, really. Now I listened to this one this week with Stephen A. Smith. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was all right. I think with me, I wish he would not bundle the in the moment talk with these longer form interviews. I don't know why he doesn't break them up. I'd feel better if Kevin Costner was his own episode. I don't like that, and this might not be true, but I think it's true. I don't like that it starts with like 2019 NBA free agency and then goes into an evergreen conversation with Kevin Costner. And I think there must be a reason they're doing that they're not finding the same download numbers when they do the standalone episode. Whereas they can bring people in to listen and you've already gotten the download at that point. But I don't like that. I always like standing alone because I like having a nice inventory that I know what I'm getting into. And I would listen to it. I just want to press play and have that hour-long conversation. It's kind of what I like with Mark Maron, that it's just, he never really pushes that hour. He's going to hit it. You're going to be 55 minutes. He's going to be in. He's going to be out. You're going to learn about someone. You're going to get to know someone. It's got its own appeal and its own sound, and then you're going to kind of move on, and that's it. Sometimes in the beginning, he'll have an open where as part of an ad, he'll interview someone for like 5 minutes, whatever, but I like that aspect of it. I like knowing you're pressing play to step into a discussion with an individual person. I don't like when it's these NBA All-Star thoughts and an interview with I don't know, just some actor, or even some actor who he's been sitting on the interview for 4 months on top of it, or like 3, or he sits on them, and there must be a reason he's doing that, and it always comes down to the bottom line. But the more it's gone on, I really have started to feel that the more success The Ringer has, and it does seem to be having tremendous success as a digital and podcast platform, and it's very smart business-wise what they're doing, but it feels a little diluted from the brand from what it was when he was like this little nimble ship that was hooked to the mothership of ESPN. I just felt like it was different. Like I felt like it was easy for him to get on the guests who I want him to have because they were at ESPN. And it put him in a position where the podcast just felt different. And again, maybe it was because I was 6 or 7 years younger. Maybe you kind of grow on these things. I mean, I find that I listen to Howard Stern still out of duty. But I shouldn't use that word in his world. I listen to it because it's what I need to do, and it's because it's what I'm paying for. And I called Sirius up again yesterday, as I do every year when it's coming up on the subscription date, and I say I'm calling to cancel my subscription, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can I ask why?" Because it's going to be $350 a year for an audio service. And they go, okay, so you're saying, and it's probably an Indian call center with a weird name. I think the woman's name was Charm. And, she said, okay, so you're saying that the price is too high. It's almost like they have to be heard, like it's a hostage video. They have to be heard saying this. And then they go, okay. And then
how do you react? Yes, it's too high.
Okay. Well, it looks like you paid, $150 last year for the year. You're a loyal customer. Would it be okay if we charge you that much? I go, yeah, that would be okay. That's about $200 off. That would be good. And then I will continue. So I do that every year. And partially because I'm paying for it, I always listen to it. And also the most recent episodes, you can download them, but after a month, the episodes start to prune off, like without you even knowing. And so I do feel a need to keep listening to that to stay up to date. And it is a really good show, but I don't like listening to one thing too much either. I mean, I've really gotten into, there's nothing making me feel like I have to press play on something anymore. I'm kind of overthinking the on-demand content economy. And so I listen to a lot of articles, like the New Yorker articles. That's how I can kind of get that done, especially with school. These long articles, I can listen to them on a car ride. And I'm trying to get back into doing audiobooks. I'm trying to keep 2 or 3 going at a time.
I've actually gotten back to audiobooks. Now, here's what's funny. I actually canceled my Audible account last week just because I have all these books built up, credits built up for the last year that I got books on. And so, like, at least 6 of them haven't touched yet. So I'm like, well, what am I doing wasting money? How about cancel it now, read these books, go through these books, and then once it's over, then re-up the
that's
service
what you
again.
got to do. I mean, just always make sure when you do that you don't cancel before using up the credits, because they'll take them with them.
No, I have the credits.
Yeah.
I don't use them already. I made sure
it's
that,
funny,
believe me.
where I go to college, Rutgers Business School, Audible is on the upper floors of the business school.
Really?
That's where they're based. Right here in Newark, yeah.
Nice. How is school going for you, by the way? I know you returned to school recently.
Yeah, so I'm going back to school for the first time in 15 years, and I'm doing the MBA program, the Masters of Business Administration. And I was a little worried about doing it because I was not the greatest student. I was a little unmotivated. But I'll tell you, 15 years has been magical because I am such a good student now, and it comes down to conscientiousness, it comes down to organization, it comes down to putting the work in. And I'm not trying to brag, but I have 2 classes, that's what I can bear, and I got 2 A's. And I was shocked because one of the classes was accounting, and I studied so hard on my vacation, and I was enjoying it. I wasn't upset about the fact I had to study. I could get a chance to break off at 5 a.m, get a cup of coffee at the Keurig, and just study. And I got 2 A's. And I studied so hard, and I was so immersed in the materials that when I took the test, I was like, man, I did so bad on that. I totally did bad on that because I was like so stimulated with overthinking. But I found that it's been a really good confidence builder because I think you work in a place for a long time and maybe you start to get a little bit overlooked. And then you go into a place like this where you're among equals and other people who are really motivated to push on in similar circumstances, who have really good jobs and really good businesses and organizations. And you find yourself parallel, if not in some respects, ahead of the class. And you're building up friendships, you're building up networking opportunities. Friendships built on having schoolwork to do are the best friendships, I'm telling you, because it's real and it's like it's happening now and we're all in this together with the same exact assignments. I've built up so many tight little groups of friendships just in one semester, and I look forward to how it's going to go. But I've really enjoyed it.
You should bring on the podcast and talk about their journey. I don't know.
I totally have to. I totally have to. I mean, I have to introduce that a little more. But it's really been the one thing about trying to do well in school, and then having the 2 kids and the wife and being away 2 nights a week, basically 2 bedtimes. It's hard to find not only the time, but the bandwidth and internal motivation, because doing a podcast definitely takes quite a bit of energy and bandwidth. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad podcast. Your mind has to be spry. It has to be alive and stimulated. You just can't jump into it and not try to be entertaining. Whether we are or not, I don't know, but it's hard. It's hard to do that.
I am shocked though. Right. I am shocked though that you just confessed that you were not the most motivated person in school 15 years ago. That I don't know why I'm shocked about that. It sounds maybe obviously I didn't know you then, so maybe I don't know. I'm just kind of shocked. I always felt maybe you were a pretty good student that, you know.
Yeah, I was a good student when I had to be. Like at a point in high school when I realized I had to get a certain grade to get into a certain school, I became like an honor student. But I always had, and we all do this, the activities you enjoy on the side outside of school become your life. So for me, it was music. For me, it was, some level sports, but it was really music, both the consumption and the creation of it. It was all I thought of.
I can relate. In fact, I gave up school because of it.
And so that's what happened. And when you're a kid, you don't understand the ramifications of that, of not going all in on school. And I don't think I understood the real world ramifications of my parents' money being on the line and helping me get through an expensive school like NYU. And it's not that I was a negative character about it, but I just didn't take it as seriously as I should. And it's taken years to get to that point where I see the value and I want to compete and thrive in this. And for the last 10 years, 12 years, I've taken it upon myself to just read. And what reading does is it allows you to go into any setting, into any room, in any environment, and be able to go one-to-one and speak to people, because you're just filled with knowledge. You're filled with facts. You're filled with current events. You're filled with every cocktail tidbit you could ever imagine. And reading is the magical sauce. Reading is making school. I'm putting in a lot of work, but it is making school probably 50% easier than it is for someone who maybe doesn't read like that or consume.
It helps. It also probably helps that you have a wife and 2 kids that depend on you. Obviously the motivation is different too. When you have, it's not about you anymore. It's about you plus 3.
That's right. And a lot of times when I'm in school, you'll kind of find that there are the age difference is like 27 to like 45, I'd say, in general. It's almost like that marketing, 25 to 54 way. It's like that's about the gamut. And you'll find that the folks who are 29 to 31 who are maybe single, don't have kids, they're like shocked. They're like, I don't know how you're doing this. But I just think whether it's time, whether it's experience, you just learn how to thrive in limiting conditions. And so I've just learned on little sleep, because Connor's got to get a little better at that, on little sleep, with little time, to just maximize every moment. And this is what I always did with podcasting. But now I have to focus on school, because school is the thing that's like legit in the moment, and you're paying for it, and you want to get everything you can out of it. So you just have very little time, and you just have to maximize that time. And the one thing I will say, when you're going back to school and you're married to a wife and a family who really believes in education, and I think my wife's mom has like 3 master's degrees. My wife has a master's
Really?
degree plus whatever, on the guide for teachers. And so when I said I was going to do this, it was the thing where that was like, I can do no wrong with it. So when I'm away for 2 nights, I never hear a peep from home. I never hear, this was a terrible bedtime, this was that, it's like, I'm proud of you, you go do this, we have it, we got it. And it's like the one time where that's ever happened. I'm not saying my wife complains or anything, but I think if I'm out at the bar, the conversation's a little different. I don't think she's proud of me or we got this, I'm with you. I think it's get the hell home right now. But it's given a little space too. My being away 2 nights in a row makes me come home much more refreshed and much more rejuvenated to see my children and to do bedtimes again. It's not just one endless slog. And I think that's why it's always important to be striving to do more, even when you don't think you have the time or opportunity to do more, because there always is time. And all you have is what's in front of you. And so if you don't knock things off, check them off the box, move through. I mean, just by deciding to do this, I'm a semester down. I have 6 credits down and I have 2 A's, a 4.0 or whatever. And I keep thinking, what if I decided to do this 2 years ago? But you can't think that way. Just look what's in front of you and go. And so it's just been a really rewarding experience in so many ways, even personally. I mean, I enjoy leaving work here. I go get some dinner. I've been doing intermittent fasting on school days because I don't have to worry about going home. So I eat like at noon, and then I get like a really big meal, and I'll eat that at like 5:30 before 6 o'clock class. I'll get like the halal guys, or I'll get Qdoba, or one day I got Olive Garden. And I eat that, and then you have the whole class, and then by the class is over, you don't feel like bloated and ridiculous, and you get home and you go to bed. So I've actually enjoyed having this different alternate experience and really making a lot of friends and interesting contacts and networking prospects, even though I don't think of it that way. We're all friends. We're all just kind of moving through the same thing. We got like study groups. It's neat. It's a lot of fun.
Safe to say the grandparents are involved heavily now with you being home, not being home, you said twice a week?
Yeah.
Grandparents are heavily involved, I imagine?
Well, sort of. My mom is a freeholder in Bergen County, and she is in the midst. This is her campaign season right now, so she's out. And my wife's mom has been a little bit overwhelmed by the 2-kid juggling. I just don't think she can do it. She's a bit up, she's a bit up there in age, and she's not disabled, but she just doesn't have the kind of, it's tough for us all in our late 30s.
That's like my mom.
And so
that's my mom has health challenges herself. So
yeah, so she's a help as like an assistant. We can't put it on her. So we're really going into this official school year with our nanny, and then her daughter are going to cover the majority of the days now. So that is one of the hard things of the second kid, is it really kind of, it loosens the tether, I think, to that next generation, because it's so hard, and they don't want to say it's too hard because it sounds bad as a grandparent saying my grandkids are too hard, and you don't want it to be too hard for them. Like that's not right. You want to have the traditional.
That's being honest, bro. My mother confessed to me like a year ago that my youngest Logan, who's now 2, is tough to deal with, like by herself. Like she would need like my stepdad there with her to help her out with that, or she can take her to 6-year-old, because 6-year-old can fend for himself, but a 2-year-old, yeah, he's a daddy's boy. Like my wife barely, no, I'll say barely, she does well with him too, but given a choice, seeing the parents to put him down to sleep or to calm him down when he's like having a tantrum, I'm the one that's pretty much the go-to. So it's not, every child's different, every situation's different, and grandparents, better that they're honest about it instead of saying, I got it, and then they complain about it later.
The whole I'm here to help, and then you start getting like the all points bulletin texts and calls, and you're like, see, you got to be honest with us upstream, because I can't deal with this now. I'm so, like, if my older son is going crazy and being a terror, I can't do anything about it. And you know what? You're now showing weakness by calling me. Like, you have to handle it. I'm sorry. I can't do anything. Me telling it over the phone, he's going to go, okay, I'm going to do it anyway, And that's the hard part, is when you see the kids kind of putting a cleave between, their parents and grandparents. Not in a bad way, but it just, I don't know. It's a little sad, because you kind of think that they're going to be able to handle it, but then they can't. I barely can when I'm by myself. It's impossible with 2 kids to put them to bed by themselves.
I'll be honest, I'm a lot more liberal about. It's funny, 'cause like I have similar situation with like that you have, not so much the school part, but my wife and I, we have pretty much opposite schedules. Like, I work 3 days a week, she works 4 days a week, and the 4 days I'm off, she's working, and vice versa. And there are 2 days in there where she's gone the entire day, like 13-hour plus days. Like today, for example. So I have, basically she's gone for the rest of the day. So I have the kids, have to get the old one from school after this podcast. I gotta make them dinner, and give them showers, and all that. And then homework, of course, too, if necessary. And then bedtime. It's not easy, but it's a sacrifice, because it's either that or paying for a babysitter, and I'd rather not pay for a babysitter. I'd rather just take it on the chin and just deal with it.
No, absolutely.
But it's tough.
And I think there's probably, they go through different phases of toughness. I mean, right now it's so tough for me because the kids are such different stages. The baby being 6 months, he relies on you 100%. I mean, you got to feed him. He's a little difficult and fussy going to sleep. So a lot of times I'm putting my 4.5-year-old Liam down in front of the TV and hoping I can get Connor down within one episode of something. And Liam's not bad in the time, but if you start to move to a second episode, he starts to feel kind of the pangs of jealousy. And it's really hard. If you can have 2 around, and that's where the grandparent thing kicks in, because, well, first of all, my mom is fantastic. She can handle the 2. She's a trooper. I don't know how she does it. She handles the 2.
My mother-in-law also same thing.
She handles the 2 better than I can. But if you have one with you that you know can sit with the other kid while you're trying to prepare the other one for bed, it's such a difference. I don't like using a TV as the main babysitter. And I don't like coming home into having to be alone to put them down, because you're like, man, long day, it's 6:30, hour commute home, and now I got to like really be up. I got to be ready. I'm doing my stand-up routine, and it's game time. And like once you get to that 8 p.m., they're both in bed, you take a sigh of relief, pour a glass of wine.
Yeah, of course.
and like last night I did a podcast, because it's that time of year where you do your college podcast. Like it's a meeting. It's an appointment I have to keep. And so I had a couple of nice IPAs while we were doing it, ate my dinner, and we went forward and did it. But it's hard. It's just, there's so little time.
Some of those shows, like, and you and I have a similar type of style of, I guess, how we do our shows. Like, we have certain shows that we do every year. You have your Oscars podcast. Obviously I have my NBA and NFL over-unders I do every year. We have an idea when we're going to do it. You plan this thing, you plan it like weeks in advance, I'm sure, a month in advance, right? Like, you have a date locked in pretty much, say, because I imagine you'll do the NFL one probably, if not next week, then certainly the week after. You have that locked in like months in advance, right? Like, you told your wife, hey, listen, I need this date free because we're doing NFL over-unders on this day.
I'm a little more just in time. I start to feel the seasons coming on, and then the Sports Illustrated, which I haven't paid for Sports Illustrated in maybe 8 months, but I still get it every week. I don't know how that works, but when that Sports Illustrated comes out, first college basketball or college football, then I know it's time. I start looking at when the first games are. And it ends up being around the beginning of this week each year, because you want to get maximal coverage with days to spare before the season starts. Now, the real weekend is the week later, so you sort of have a nice 2-week run where that is where that's a relevant episode. But I know that then the NFL preview comes out the next week, and so I tackle that, and both shows end up being different people, which is helpful. NBA as well ends up being a different person, and of course Tim Castano's in all of them. But
yeah, same with my buddy Zach does both the NBA and NFL, because he's my first guy I ever had. Plus, he's a big time gambler, so it's in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So that ends up being it, and you get those major mileposts in place, and then I like those because they have life. You can promote them like hell, really, right up through the first couple of weeks, because they're always pertinent, and then you can always come back to them as reference points. And I sort of will then, I don't like to then do that stuff weekly, because then it gets too rote, and I'm not, the funny thing is,
we mean the picks and stuff. You mean the picks, or
like to keep following like college football and NFL football that intensely week after week. I have a hard time with it, because what I find is I have the time to digest a full season that just happened, and then to be ready for a new season and make my own original inferences. But then when you get into the main season, there are people who are 100% following every aspect of the main season and are going to do a much better job than I can on a week-to-week basis. Because when you get to the week-to-week basis, you have to actually start breaking down minute things that happened in game plans and scouting and just things that I just don't have the time or I'm ready to do. So I try to leverage my best aspects, which I think are digestion and prognostication to a degree, and psychology. And you can do that in the times when people aren't playing. And so I try to get that out there with the most time you can. I didn't get a chance to do yet the NBA one. I love that one the best, though, because you do it around free agency, and that thing has like 3 months of runtime.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Even this season. So that's where I really like to set things up, because I just don't want to be releasing episode after episode every week that's just a slight alteration on what I said the week before, because I watch the games, I care about them, but I'm not deep in enough, and I don't want to be that, like, I don't want to be deep into well, they were doing the I formation too much here, and then they went to a split wide out, blah blah blah. Like I'm fake and derivative.
In other words, you're not an analyst. You don't want to be an analyst, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's funny, like that's something I actually consider going away from now. Like I do a weekly on my show. We have the thing called Student Game Report. My buddy Kyle comes on the show every week. And he covers this stuff all the time. And what I do though is I don't get into the minutia necessarily. We get into the narratives more than anything else. And I'll basically set him up questions and stuff, takeaways, and he'll just bounce off and we'll bounce off each other. But, we might still do weekly this year. That's still probably going to happen, but I've started to embrace the idea of maybe not doing that weekly anymore like I used to because, again, burnout. And also, those shows maybe have 3 days legs, 4 days legs, depending on when you release it and when the next game is and all that. Yeah. And I've started to not enjoy those as much as I used to. Now we'll see what happens going into the year because I say that now, but then Labor Day comes, I'm like, okay, let's do a podcast, let's go. You know what I mean? So, but I'll say the NFL is the only sport I think you can get away with doing it weekly because things do change because.
Well, there's only one game.
What we thought may be so, may not be so week 4, or may not be so week 8.
Yeah, for football, I really enjoy the quarterly system. I think a 4-game stretch in a 16-game season allows you to make a lot of judgments on where you stood at the beginning part of that 4-game stretch and at the end, and where you're looking ahead to the next 4. Although, one other thing I've really kind of noticed about consumer culture in all the realms, when you talk about something, after the first thing, that's like the most popular it's ever going to be. Like, do you ever notice when people will so like a new show's coming out, right? I mean, it's not as much now because everything's like dropped and binged, but like when a new show comes out, like, oh, The Walking Dead's back. Everybody talks about it after the first episode because everybody caught up to watch it together for that first episode. And then from there, you don't hear about it again because everyone watched it. So I almost have this idea of doing something after the first entry of it. So it's not a preview, but it takes all the aspects of a preview and then feeds them into what you say after knowing what just happened because everybody's paying attention to it at that time. Same thing. Look at Major League Baseball opening day. Everyone talks about opening day. Everyone loves opening day. It's still the thing that is the most important sports event outside of the Super Bowl, and I don't even know if Daytona 500 matters, but these single-day sports events. It still is like up there with all of them. It's even bigger sometimes than the World Series, and it's like everyone worries so much. Oh, opening day. Here's our opening day starter. Hey, here's the slate of 25 games on opening day running on ESPN, and we all watch it and we love it, and then we stop watching the next day. So I always think there's this weird psychological thing that happens where everyone pays attention through the first thing. And so that's when you talk about it. So I see it trending, all of it. It's like, oh, season premiere. They care more about the season premiere than the season finale in everything. Even in the Super Bowl. Like, no one talks about the Super Bowl once it actually happens, So it's always better to sort of talk about things after the first thing. Even the first weekend of the playoffs, which is wild card in football, seems to get more talk than even the ones in the next weeks, which are the better games and the better teams. So I don't know. That's kind of where I land on that. So I'm always excited after the first week to talk.
For you, it's easier to do that too, especially do the quarterlies or weekly or the once every 8 weeks because your short format allows that. Number one, you do what, maybe one show a week, if that, not anymore. I mean, that's harder now to do that, but when you can, it's one a week, and you have so much want to talk about that. Football shouldn't take all your space. I mean, you want to talk about tech, you want to talk about this, and I'm with you on that one. And again, I'm also kind of starting to bridge that way too a little bit where I don't necessarily enjoy talking about sports or engrossing in one sport once a week like I used to. Like NFL might be the only sport I could probably still get away doing that again because of the fact that things do change week to week. So I have a corner for that. I have a Monday podcast I do with my buddy Kyle, comes on the show with 30 minutes and just go on recap the week, and that's it. But I don't want to dedicate 2 and 3 shows to this football in the same way anymore like I used to.
Yeah.
It's almost repetitive in his
because
way.
it just gets. Yeah,
repetitive.
I'm all about maximizing when I feel excited about something. And talking about it then, because then I'm excited about it. The minute I don't feel excited about wanting to do something, I don't want to do it. So I don't want to be locked into having to do it. And I always have different subjects. Like, there's ways you'll end up tying sports in somehow, but you got to trust that you're going to do it as opposed to plan to do it.
I actually, that theory you're talking about, I actually tested that theory with the NBA during the playoffs. Whereas instead of talking about the playoffs as the main cursor of each episode, I kind of just like made it part of the show. In other words, I had all these topics, prepared outside of sports, and then I set aside 50 minutes in the episode to just talk about the playoffs and kind of give a quick overview. And it was kind of cool, actually. It was weird for me because, like, typically I would, dedicate an entire episode to the playoffs, but I started to, this year, during the playoffs, instead of dedicating entire episodes to the playoffs, I dedicated maybe just a portion of the podcast to the playoffs, and it was actually not bad. Felt pretty good. Yeah,
I've had a little bit of a paradigm shift with the podcast a little bit, and it's come of all places from Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't love Gary V. I think he can be a little like annoying, and he can be in your face constantly, and I don't even know sometimes if the advice he's giving is the best advice. It's sort of like challenger brand and hustler, and it's like, but sometimes the hustle becomes like a meme and a joke, like it's not even serious. But there's something, I forget where I read about it, but you notice how ever present he is on everything you like do now. Like if you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn. And again, I forget where I heard it or read it, but that's the point, is he's so ever present that it doesn't matter where you had it, but he had a touch point with you somewhere. And the one thing he said, which has sort of changed my thought on this, is to always be creating content and just decide when to release it and how to release it. So, like if he's on a podcast with somebody else's podcast, he is at the same time filming himself on the podcast, and he has somebody who follows him around all day. I can't do this, but we could all take certain aspects of this. He has someone who follows him around all day, just filming him, speaking to people, events, when he does his own podcast, when he does, that's a full-on thing. When he does other people's podcasts, when he does this appearance, when he does this talk in front of people. And then what he does is at the end of the day, they catalog all that, and then they find hits, and then they create little like 1-minute hits based on any piece of content he came out there, and they put little like things where the words of what he's saying go on there. They put little like accompaniments with it. And that just changed really what I thought. And so that's why you've probably seen, I've been lately sharing a lot of these old episodes that are about to go away in the index of podcasts, which keep about 100 of your most recent podcasts, and using that function, that clip function from Overcast, and just
Overcast.
It's really good.
It's the best, isn't it? It's awesome. It's convenient.
I'm trying to follow that thing more. Where who cares how people interface with you? Like, we all want it to be our podcast, and we work so hard to get listeners and to get people downloading it and all that, but like a podcast is kind of hard too. It's kind of hard to like, it's like 2 or 3 steps to get it into the right app and to get it downloaded and to get it subscribed and then to remember to listen to it each time. It's not the easiest thing. So really it's our job at that point, if we think our content is so good, to make it accessible, to find ways to clip it, to find ways to videotape ourselves doing it. And I was like, well, maybe what I should do is when I do a solo podcast, just videotape the whole thing.
Didn't you used to?
Not live.
Didn't you used
just
to do that
videotape the whole thing?
I did it.
I did it. Yeah, I did it with like YouTube and stuff. But yeah, I did. I definitely did. But I was thinking of almost doing it not for a live show, but literally just recording yourself doing it, and then figuring out what clips you want to take from it. And I think a minute is good. I think that idea from Instagram is good. If it can't be said in a minute, it's too long. And so I've just been kind of cutting clips, and then what I think is cool is you set your phone up even, which is the best camera you can almost buy if you have a newer phone, and you just record yourself in HD or 4K doing your podcast. And I know space is an issue, so what you do is after it, in the time before your next podcast, you decide which parts you want to edit. You use iMovie. You put little cool I don't know, pictures, or you put the text over piece, and then you put those out, because people will connect with your content. And it didn't have to be, we spend an hour recording something. It takes so much time to do, and then it's sort of like, all right, it's out. Hopefully people all listen and download, and you can drive people to it. You can timestamp it and drive people to those, but it's still hard. You're still suckering them into listening to the whole thing, which I want them to do. But otherwise, we're losing a whole audience of people who interface with things on a 30-second to 1 minute basis. And so then it's our job to put it in front of those people too, so it looks like we're always creating. And how does our podcast live on Instagram? It doesn't. So you got to do clips. How does it really live well on Twitter? Sure, we get some hits off of it and downloads, but if you post it to Twitter, or you post a good clip to Facebook, you might get 75, 100, 150 hits on that, or views on that aren't translating over to the full podcast, but they're an ancillary piece, and you created it already.
It's a promotional piece, in other words.
It is, but it's also its own piece, right? I mean, it's its own piece of content. So I don't care at that point, even if they come over to the podcast. It would be great, but it's still using the great equipment and sound. It's just giving them a snippet without without relying on them to listen to the whole thing. It's putting it in front of people. It's putting a small piece in front of people that hopefully they interact with. So I've started just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm starting back from the episodes that are available. Like one I posted yesterday is already gone because I put a new podcast up today, right? The college football one. So that one's gone. But I got life out of it before it left. And it's now made me think, well, what I could do is go back over my old archive, and I can't use Overcast to do it, but I could use like Premiere Pro. I could use iMovie, and I could pull the audio in to that and do the snipping there, trimming there, and maybe even put some graphical elements over it, and then re-release those as pieces.
You know what's funny though? It's really funny. I'm checking it right now. The next episode to go up by the wayside is mine from 2 years ago. from March 5th, 2017, the episode we did together, the first time on the show.
There's synchronicity
that's the next one
for
by
you.
the wayside. Like, whoa. Yeah, you should. I mean, one of the ideas I think you should probably look into also too, and it's something I do once a blue moon. Oh, somebody's awake. Is maybe like, because you have what, 300 and
yeah, something like 310, something 20, like that.
309 episodes. Right, you have another 200 plus episodes that are gone that you can bring back once in a while or whatever. Like kind of like a lot of times. Oh wait, hey, you awake now? Are you awake? Oh, you're still tired. Never mind. Boy's still tired. It's okay. Want to pass fire? There you go. Yeah, we're live on air. It's all right. No, but I mean, you can probably share some old interviews you did, like Jeff Roman maybe or something. I don't know, and just kind of sort of like get like a Throwback Thursday type of episode, maybe once in a while. You know, I know once in a while I'll throw an episode on my pod. I did my dad 2 years ago before the election, 3 years ago before the election, or I'll do an episode. Do an episode from like. The problem with mine though, I think my problem is the fact that most of my stuff from way back was so sports centric that they don't really matter. It's gotta be
evergreen, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So unless you're a nerd that wants to like look back at the Detroit Lions this year, no one's gonna care. So for me to find things from like 2015, 16 that would probably be relevant now, it's a little more of a challenge for me. And that's one of the reasons why I started going back to trying to create more evergreen content. Or do the thing you're doing also too, which I've done also as well. You know, take snippets of episodes from yesteryear and just kind of
absolutely. I like the idea of re-releasing old episodes so that they get back into the mix. And you might have a different listening base than you had. Well, hopefully you do than you had 3 or 4 years ago when those might have come out. So
And I think in your case too, especially, it probably will serve you right because of your schedule. Like, if you know you're gonna miss a week of podcasting, well, throw in an episode from yesterday. I'll give you an example. This is sound really crazy, but one of the things I've gotten into heavily recently, and sound like I'm a big wrestling fan. I'm a big old school fan, but I started watching the current product recently in the last couple months, which I talk about on my show quite a few times now. So Stone Cold Steve Austin, has his own podcast, a very popular podcast, actually, very popular. But he took a break for like about 6 months this year. So what he did, he has a library of stuff from like 2012, 13, 14, and up to like last year. He started to keep his feed fresh. He would start posting classic episodes of interviews that he did 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, to keep the feed fresh. And then he came back recently. So, but that's something that, that's the good thing about podcasting. Like, if you have evergreen material, you have stuff that can you can cheat your way through it to some degree. Now, me personally, I love to have fresh content every week anyway. So, but it's not the worst idea in the world to try to maybe bring in some older stuff that people might appreciate.
Absolutely, and that's why I might also I might bring them into iMovie a little bit and see if there's some interesting things I can do with that, because the video stuff, when it's considered a video too, it just gets better. It gets better. It gets better metrics. People press play, and it's only like, if it's short enough, it's interesting, and hopefully they talk about it. And like today, I was going through one from this guest I had, which ended up being the subject of a magazine article I wrote for the Newark Bound magazine. And he started a cider works in New Jersey based on old Newark cider trees. And he had a whole career where he was like a lawyer, a movie producer, the founder and CEO of an ad agency. He was almost ran for political office. And just a small snippet of that, where I asked him, did he think that each of those jobs was actually going to be the one he's stuck with, or does his mind not work that way? And he went into a whole little minute bit on how he tried to be a lawyer. And so I turned that into a little thing that I could share, that you can go through this whole thing and it's okay to still not be a lawyer, even if you try and you get a great job. And I got a lot of hits on that. And then because that's more of a professional type of thing, I can share that on LinkedIn. And so there's just many touch points, and there's many ways to frame. Think how much content. I mean, even if I had 1 hour for each show, and sure, there's been plenty that have been more, but I'd say about an hour. We're looking at 310 hours of content. That's, not all bad. And not all bad. And
no, not at all. No. I'll be honest with you. I still on your podcast, I still prefer you. Well, not that I prefer, but I do love your solo stuff probably a lot more, just because you get more meat, more meat when it comes to learning about things, because you can tech. You're passionate about tech. You get into a lot of the tech stuff and movies, and you get a lot in there. It's funny, interviews, depending on who you're talking to. I mean, it depends on I guess what I'm trying to say. I think you and I discussed this last year on my show, on this show, whatever, simulcast, that people actually, like you were saying, the downloads you had last year, for example, or your best downloads were actually your solo shows, even the ones that you did with your closest friends.
It's totally the case. I actually,
same here.
And I don't think I'm better than guests I can get, but sometimes when I have a guest, that was the fun thing with having a comedian, is comedians are so fast on their feet that it matched the way my brain works. And I had so much fun with it. I want to have more comedians, because if I have a guest, even if I love that guest as a in some other realm, as a writer, as a movie person, as a sports personality, whatever, I'm asking a question and I'm stepping away, and I'm sort of bored having to step away. I want to have a banter, but there's a certain expectation. If you have a certain kind of guest, you have to ask them things and they have to answer them. And I'm not comfortable enough, and they're not comfortable enough with me to be truly conversational and banter. And so that is a difficulty when I do my own show. Not saying it's better than having a guest, but I just know where I can take it, and I get everything out. I don't feel like I left anything on the table. because I'm able to just clear my list.
How was your prep? Well, that's a good question. That's actually a good segue. How do you prep for a show normally? Like, what does it take for you to prep for a show? Like, say you do a show by yourself, your solo shows.
Well,
like
before school started, I keep a list all week, and on that list, I use Evernote. On that list, I call it. I used to try to do it daily. There was a podcast I heard where this guy said, keep a daily story. At the end of every day, write down everything you can think of about that day. It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be, quality. But just write down everything you can think of from that day. And if you do that every day, by the end of a week, you're going to have 7 days worth of content. And you're going to forget those things you thought about on Monday. And now at the end of a month, you got 30, 31 days of it. And maybe something on day 28 ties to something from day 4. And you never would have known it if you didn't write it down, because the mind can only keep so much on the burner. So I do that in the form of an Evernote. I tried every day, but that became too onerous. So what I do is I do a monthly. So I'll call a list July 2019, August 2019. Anything that when July's over, I move the untouched items from July 19 into August 2019. And what I do is I just keep adding to this list thoughts, movies, things I went through that day that struck my mind, articles. It's just a whole thing of a whole list of items that interested me. And then what I do is that same idea from that person who said to write every day. When it's time to do a podcast, I then have a list ready to go, whether I remembered it or whether I think there's anything in there that's groundbreaking. But what I can see are things that tie together. I see weird constructs between different items that I thought on one day versus now, and something maybe happens in the news that day that can tie 4 of the items together. And so I don't prep much. I just live my life and I write about it. And then at the end of it's almost like if I were doing a blog in a way, but it's just my own internal. And then at the end of that week, I have a lot of content. I usually have enough to do 45 minutes to an hour, and there's still spillover. And then what happens is once I start talking about the things, I just start wandering and going off into things that weren't even on the list, because there's something in my mind once I started talking about it that struck, or a connection, or an analogy.
That's where that's where, like, for me, like, I have the Unfiltered podcast, the little rev reaction on the go, whatever, on my phone. That's where that comes into play for me. Like, if I want to react to something that came out right away and I can't get in the studio to record it right now or can do a whole show in the moment, have that, like, like other, I guess, side B. I call it side B.
Yeah.
of the Earnest Christian podcast, Unfiltered. I have like a topic centric little episode, 5 minutes, just dive into that.
No, I mean, that's a good way to go.
That's where that comes into play.
Always just create content, and don't worry about that thing you're creating in the moment being the finished product of where that content is going to end up. Whether that's on the page, whether that's in person, whether that's with a guest, whether that's, again, like I'm saying, I'm sharing things these last couple days that are 2.5 years old. They're bringing new life. Who knew 2 years ago when I released them that they were going to show up using this new format that didn't exist then? And then using the knowledge I've attained from what I read about Gary Vaynerchuk doing it. I'm not doing it at the levels he's doing it. I'm not even fully applying those lessons, but I'm trying to integrate them somehow because I do see utility in what he's saying. And that's why I'm trying to sort of do it. And and it's a way to bridge content still while I'm not able to create an hour-long podcast every week. Even though I do want to get back to that. We got 5 minutes.
Want to talk Giants real quick?
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
It's gonna be a bad year, man. Sure. It's gonna be a bad year. I did a podcast earlier today, and I said basically that the 4 worst teams in football this year are gonna be the Redskins, the Dolphins, the Cardinals. Who, by the way, I went through the Cardinals schedule, and obviously when we do over-unders next week, they're gonna be pretty bad. I went through the schedule. That's a very good candidate for 0-16 this year, based on the schedule.
And once that thing started happening with
the clapping, thing started happening with the clapping, that's a disaster, because that's like Kyler Murray's entire game. Is that clapping thing, and they're gonna call him on that? Oh boy, that's going to be an issue. If they're going to be fighting refs on the guy clapping, wow, that's not going to be good. But he might also come in and do what Baker did. He doesn't have the talent there around him, but it's possible that he could be. It's possible he could be transcendent. I mean, and transcendence will still get you, some nice runs here or there, some displays of his skill and his ability and his explosion. So it will be interesting to watch. But the Giants, I don't know. The hard part for me with football is my previews are based on the written word, what I think about the team. I just can't watch preseason. And then by the time, even if I'm ready, because it's different nights of the week, I don't even know when it's going to be, so I always miss it. And then by the time you're like, oh my God, the Giants are playing, and then you put them on and it's like nobody's against nobody's. But in my small moments, my couple of thoughts are, you forget Saquon Barkley's on this team, and he's in year 2. He is, if they can harness him as a weapon with Odell gone, it's going to be scary good. And he is going to literally smash the football field. He's going to be unbelievable. I like that they have this.
The football field. He's going to be unbelievable.
Can we stop? Can we stop with the Cowboys-Giants opening game every year?
I know. It's just
seriously stop.
I don't need it. I just don't need it. Can we even just take 1 year off where they don't have to play their division so much too? Like, does football need to do that? Do they have to do the 2 division games in a 16-game season every year? I love seeing teams play other teams, and it's like the teams. It's the same thing with baseball with the 19 games in division. It's just, I know it's part of the deal, but I'm like, the Mets are playing the Phillies again. It's like it's that feel. I know it makes it intense, but it's year after year. It's like, oh man. But yeah, I think that Daniel Jones, we always have to reserve the right that he could be really good. It's possible. And he definitely looks like the quarterback who plays Eli Manning on TV.
He does. He really does. Yeah.
He's got a bit more polish than Eli, and he kind of looks like he knows what he's doing out there. Again, preseason, but when I saw him in spring practice, he looks like a quarterback out there. And when I saw him when I see him in some of these preseason things, he doesn't look half bad. And that's for a rookie. I can't look at Duke tape. I'm sorry. He's throwing to guys who are. He's throwing to guys who are 6 yards wide open. And the one thing is, I wish, was he a senior or a junior? I don't remember. But if he could have played this year, if he was a junior, you'll realize why he was getting out this year, because this season they open against Alabama, Duke, and then they play like Texas A&M, and like they play so many teams. It's insane. And by the way, Mac Brown is back at Duke this year. So yeah, I think he got out at the right time, if that's the case, if it was early. But he does look like a quarterback to me. People are saying the offensive line is good, finally, while the defensive line doesn't get good. But those things I don't worry about as much, because I think if groups on the line are meant to be good, they're good, and you don't have to worry about, who's going to get this, who's going to do this. It all comes down to the players who can do things. It's everyone from the tight end out and behind the line. And so I think that's going to be key.
Behind the line.
They could. You talk about quarterly. You probably does a podcast later to hear quarterly podcast here. They could go 2-2 here. At Dallas, home against Buffalo. At Tampa, home against Washington.
Yeah, I'm just afraid to say they're good. Like, I felt they were going to be deep. Although I had them going 7-9 last year.
I'm not saying they're good at all.
They have to.
I'm not going to say they're good. I think it'll be one of the worst teams football this year. But I'm saying they can go 2-2 here based on the schedule. Dallas without Zeke Elliott. Buffalo is Buffalo. We can see at home. Tampa at Tampa, and then home against the Redskins.
Well, Tampa's got the Arians Nation thing going on there too, though. It's going to be.
That's true.
Yeah.
That'd be a loss, in my opinion.
I gotta look at the schedule. I don't know if I'm ready to think if the Giants are really, really bad, or decent. It's hard. I got to look.
Here's the second quarter. Here's the second quarter of the schedule quick. Home against Minnesota, loss. At New England, duh.
Although, you know what? They always play New England well. Watch this team play them well. Watch it be like Eli's last moment.
Yeah, but this team, yeah, that'd be awesome. You know what's funny? I'll be okay with going 115 this year if the one wins against New England.
That would be amazing.
I'm okay with that.
That would be absolutely hilarious.
Seriously. Arizona at home and in Detroit on the road. I mean, again, this is not a bad schedule for the most part. Dolphins are on here. Redskins twice on here. I mean, the Jets. I mean, we'll see how good they are this year.
The Jets should be pretty good because if Sam Darnold's meant to be great, it's going to start happening in season 2. And if Bell is going to actually play, which I'm not sure any of these Pittsburgh guys are going to play, the former Pittsburgh guys, but if he's going to play, he's a weapon. I mean, he's an absurd weapon. So I think you look at that and you say, in year 2, would you rather have Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley or Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell? That's an interesting little decision there.
We can answer that question after the end of the year. Because Daniel Jones is actually relatively good. That could be something that can.
But I think they're going to be good. They're going to be decent. I think the Jets will be decent, even though they never are. Although you know too much about Adam Gase. So he's already outed. He's already outed a GM.
He's a nutcase.
Yeah, he looks it.
He's a fucking nutcase.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's a nutcase. Oh, you know we can touch on this pod. We got 2 minutes. You want to quick? The Nets, Brooklyn Nets, KD. Yeah. Well, no KD for 1 year anyway, but
no.
Are you excited?
No. Yeah,
I'm
just
wow
because I don't understand what happened here. Something happened, and when things happen in a way that's not above board, the boards tend to start breaking up. I don't know why Kyrie chose to go here. I don't know why Kevin Durant chose to do whatever Kyrie was going to do. And I actually think, I have a very weird feeling Kevin Durant's going to be back this season. I think he's going to be back at the very end. No one is telling me this. I just have a very weird feeling. Already seeing the way he's hitting shots in his pool. No, but I have a weird feeling that his own internal psychology, if he's in a place to come back, he's not complete. Like, yes, he's an athletic 7-footer, but he's not like based on pure explosion. I think he could ease in at the end of a season and be like a 6th man in a playoff, which would be interesting. And I think there's not going to be pressure put on him, but I think there's going to be a felt pressure to not wait out a whole year if you didn't need to. Now, 1 full year would be the NBA Finals, obviously. But we don't know the extent of this. I just don't know a lot. I've seen people actually come back. And I have a weird feeling we're going to hear stuff late in the season that he's ahead of schedule. He's doing this, he's doing that. Not that this matters, and not that I'm a medicine, I'm a doctor of medicine here, but he also didn't play for like 4 weeks leading up to that injury. I don't know if that matters in recuperation at all. I don't know this, but I just have a weird feeling that he's going to take a whole season off, even though it's rightful. But I have a weird feeling he's going to take a whole season off and then just come back fresh at 32 years old. He probably will, but I have a weird feeling he's gonna. And I think the Nets are going to be about what they were last year. They'll probably be around 6th, 7th, 8th seed. And Kyrie will have moments where he lights the place up. And I think this whole season he's going to be good, though. I think Kyrie's going to be fine this season, and then we're just going to have to wait and see in year 2 when and if we have the full complement of the players back. But remember, this is the first time in Kyrie's career he's going where he wants to go. I don't know why he wanted to go to Brooklyn, but he never wanted to go to Boston. In the beginning, he goes, oh, this will be good for me. It's sort of like your arranged marriage. You go, oh, yeah, this will be good for me. But I think it started to wear on him that he didn't want, he didn't choose to be here. It's like we saw with Kawhi. He won a championship and he still left. He didn't choose to be there, and he told everybody, I'm going to LA. He told the Spurs. That's why they couldn't keep him. So they sent him to Toronto, and then Toronto's like, well, maybe we can convince him. Even winning a championship didn't, and I still think he was close to doing it. But I think he was closer to staying than any of us thought would be possible. And I always wish he did. I feel so terrible about the NBA that he didn't stay. But Kyrie is choosing to be here. That's a good sign. Now, the problem is karma hits you. He can choose to be here, but his body could still betray him, and probably will. That guy's an injured dude. He's a fragile guy. He's only 26, but his body is actually Uncle Drew. And so I think that's going to be a little bit of the thing to watch. He's going to be explosive, unbelievable, and then probably around the holiday season, we're going to go, oh my God, what injury did he have? He had a staph infection in his Achilles. You know, it's going to be something weird, and then that's where we're going to see.
I should laugh.
I know. I didn't say ruptured. I said a staph infection.
That's funny to laugh at. No, me saying laughing about it.
Or not to make a joke as my final point.
Anyway,
will he cause a staph infection? STAFF. That's my big worry. Does that?
Oh my God! Yeah. And on that note, Matthew. Oh man!
Yeah, I think that was fun.
That was the simulcast,
so
man.
You'll have to send me, and then we'll. Yeah,
some content for
good.
you.
So you'll have to get me that file if you can, and then we'll stitch this bad boy together.
Yeah, and we have it on both Earnest Podcast and the Mixed Minus Podcast as well too. Matt,
thank you.
Thank
Ernest,
you.
We'll talk soon. Yeah.
That was good, man. All right, brother. Good job.